This is Happily Holistic, where we dive deeply into everything health and wellness with a big dash of spirituality and a sprinkle of business. We spotlight the uplifting and the positive and share the secret ways top wellness authors and celebrities get inspired, stay healthy, and enjoy this beautiful life. I'm your host, Amy Lee Mercury, best-selling author of 15 books and holistic health expert for the last 19 years. I can't wait to get happily holistic with you today. Hello, and welcome to Happily Holistic. I am so excited to have Biet Simken here. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes, it's Biet, like Juliet.
Biet, awesome. I'm so excited to have Biet Simken here. She is such an interesting woman, and this is our first time meeting, which is such a fun thing about hosting this podcast. So thank you so much for being here, Biet.
Thanks for having me, Amy. So cool to be together.
Yes, it is. Biet is the author of Don't Just Sit There, and she's a world-renowned meditation leader dubbed the Lady Gaga of Meditation. Very avant-garde. As a musician, Biet weaves the world of pop culture and spirituality, teaching practical applications of ancient wisdom. The teachings are featured in Biet's best-selling book, Don't Just Sit There, published by Simon & Schuster. She's been featured in Vogue, Forbes, Elle, and Time magazine, and as the resident meditation guru at the Sundance Film Festival, One Hotel's MoMA, and Soul Cycle. Sounds so much like such a fun bio. I love it.
My life is fun. Yeah.
My life is fun. You can find Biet at bietsimken.com. bietsimkin.com. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
I'm really excited you're here. So Biet and I were talking before we started to record and came to the conclusion that we're just going to allow life to channel through us, which is, I think, the way we both live our lives, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
So who knows what we'll talk about. But let's start with hearing about this Lady Gaga meditation. Tell me about your work with meditation, music, and beyond.
Yeah, so I have this background in fashion and music. I was signed to Sony at the age of 18. And did sex, drugs, rock and roll through my 20s, which was, it was good. I mean, it really helped me because I had a very, very traumatic childhood. My whole family died while I was growing up. And then I think that I was being led to being who I am today, which is a spiritual teacher. But I was very, very rebellious. And I didn't want to do what I was being told I needed to do. I didn't even really fully hear who I was. I remember when I was like 30, hearing someone say, oh, you're kind of like Yoda. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't see who I was, and all the men I dated, everyone was like with me in some regard because I was like Yoda. And I myself had no idea. Like, I was like, oh, they think I'm hot or whatever. But they were like, she's like a hot Yoda. So all that led to, when I got sober 12 years ago, I started doing these meditation experiences in art galleries and eventually in museums. I've done them at the MoMA. I've done them in planetariums. And it's just these mass meditation experiences, which I then score with my own music.
Beautiful.
And meditation, when I guide it, is very very rebellious, very out there, not so much sitting in silence for 30 minutes. It's much more animated than that. And leaving people with a feeling of being high, really, really high. Because as a former heroin addict myself, I wanted a spiritual life that was as delicious and as relieving and as presence-inducing as what I got from LSD, mushrooms, and heroin.
Yes. Do you think that you're in some way mimicking some of the brain chemicals, but in a healthier manner?
I would love to actually imagine that it has nothing to do with the brain. I feel like when I think about, of course, serotonin is important. And yes, it is induced in the breath work that I guide. But I
Yeah.
actually feel like what makes my work so incredibly impactful is that it takes people completely out of their
Beyond.
heads.
Yeah.
And you can think about it this way. If you take a bunch of cosmopolitan, type A, good looking young people, which is pretty much my crowd, and you take them all and you put them in this fabulous hotel or
Yeah.
incredible like space like Madison Square Garden, something super like chic and cosmopolitan,
Yeah.
and you put them in that space, and then you say, okay, everyone, now close your eyes and just don't think.
Yeah.
Everyone's just going to sit there thinking about themselves. They're going to think, oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm so fat. Oh my God, what if that guy doesn't text me back later? Oh my
Yeah.
God, what if blah, blah, blah. Like they're thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking.
Yes.
So what I do is I actually guide meditations that force people into shocking experiences that
Ooh.
they cannot continue thinking. So then they're like, oh my God, I meditated. It's like I force people
Yes.
into meditation covertly.
I love that. I love that. To transcendental states.
Yes, and then really it's beautiful. Half the audience is usually weeping by the end of the
Mm,
experience. And
yeah.
sometimes I was the meditation leader at Bonnaroo a few years ago, the festival.
Yeah.
And there was like this whole giant tent with hundreds of like hungover young kids, some of whom
I
were like
bet.
lying in a pile of their own vomit, some of them were like eating
Uh-huh.
burritos. And by the end of it, like I basically read them the right act. I was like, if you're not in here to like have a spiritual experience, get the fuck out of my tent.
Yeah.
And they left, and who was left was about 100 people who were like in these ecstatic meditation states,
Right.
like arms in the air. And at the end I had these like young 21-year-old boys covered in war paint, all hungover, like crying in each other's arms. And my
Oh,
husband was like, how did you
what just
do that? He's
happened?
like, I was
Yeah.
certain you were gonna bomb. He was like, I've never seen you bomb, but I was like, as he
Right.
arrived in the Bonnaroo tent, I was like, this is gonna be a first for
Yeah.
Biet. And then instead it was like this overhaul and
Wow.
transformation of all these young kids states, like weeping in each other's arms.
Beautiful. Not
That was
what
fun.
they thought they were going to go to the festival to experience, you know?
No.
But really probably what they were destined to, or their souls had called them to experience.
Apparently those people, yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. As we all know, 2020 has been a very interesting, dynamic year on this planet, and I'd love to hear your take on it, your feeling on where we're all being called through this process.
It's different for everyone, but it
Yeah,
is a real shock. And so it's gonna do what shocks do for people at the level of being that they're at, right? So if
yeah,
you're Jesus Christ and you're being hung up on a cross, that is a very different experience from
yeah.
being like a wino on the sidewalk of St. Mark's Place and dealing with
Right,
COVID, right? So
right.
I think some of us are in that Jesus state where we're literally being crucified in a way. And
Mm,
some of us are more in this like rudimentary phase of like, oh, discovering like, wow, I'm an alcoholic, or like,
yeah,
wow, I have like major financial issues. Because a lot of
yeah,
people are struck right now
yes,
by the shock that they don't have resources and they didn't
yes,
plan for a global pandemic. And
yes.
so what I will say, as someone who's endured massive poverty, grew up in poverty, endured heroin
Mm,
addiction, I lost my first baby to sudden infant death syndrome when I was
mm,
26. My
mm-hmm.
house burnt down. I've just had all these
Wow,
things happen in my
wow,
life.
wow.
Yeah, they really gave it to me good, in this
Sounds like it.
particular.
Sounds like it.
And yeah, what I will say is for anyone listening who's going through that kind of transformation where it's really, really painful, I just
Mm,
want you to know that there's no accidents. No amount of pain, no amount of bottom is wrong. And it's not like, no, the universe or God or whatever you want to call it doesn't make mistakes. And what we
mhm.
want to remember is that the excruciating experience of being human is just excruciating enough for us, even though it's really hard to believe, because even like at this phase of my life where I make tons of money and I get flown all over the world when flying is allowed, and I
Yes.
speak at conferences to thousands of people, and my life is pretty incredible. And I have a
Yeah.
beautiful, healthy child. With all that, I still endure quite excruciating states of
Yeah.
agony on this planet. And
Yeah.
so when those come, I'm always like, this can't be the right dose. Like, can't you just, like, you've got to have the
Would
wrong
you
girl or
moderate
some.
this for
I'm like,
me?
I'm like, haven't we gone through that already? Like back in the day, like, can't we just turn it down a notch?
Yeah.
And then I
Are
just
we
always
done with that?
remember, yeah. And then I just always remember it's like, no one promised me that, that equation. No one said, and I think that maybe you can relate reading Buddhist texts growing up,
Mm-hmm.
reading scriptures about Sufism and all these things. I think I had a hope that one day I would escape the karmic destiny of suffering, because that was what
Yes.
I was reading about. And I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, like, can't wait. Okay, I guess I'm going to
Yeah.
meditate the shit out of my life because I just want to escape the karmic wheel of suffering. And what I have found out as as an awakened teacher and someone who actually brings this work to the world is, wow, like, who knew? Suffering and fear and discomfort came with me for the journey. And I really have been
Yeah.
like, am I going to shake this at any point? And like, no, I
I
guess,
don't think
no.
so. When you disincarnate, I think is perhaps the time when that happens to some degree, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because one of the perspectives I think of it through, I do a lot now. My work as a medical intuitive has evolved over 20 years, but I do a lot now with the Taoist ideas and some of the different Taoist principles, and so some of the things that would, be what we would think about in acupuncture.
Yeah.
And this concept in Taoism and through acupuncture is that we have constitutional level latency, and it's there in this deep foundational place in our being. And so when latency comes up and out, we have a lot of different experiences. Some of this latency is karmic, some of it is ancestral, some of it is viral load from childhood that didn't fully clear. So when latency comes out, we have these couple different opportunities to either let the latency come out as unimpeded as possible, which can be, if it's a small enough dose, can be endurable. If it's a larger dose, can cause health issues. And if it's a really large dose, can cause also external things to happen in our world. Or we
Wow.
can let this latency come into what we call damp accumulation or dampness, and have a way station that hangs out in the body to clear slowly over time. When we take the route of dampness, we have certain health ailments that are, associated with it and stuff like that. But one of the things that I've come to notice, over a long time as a medical intuitive is we're never really done clearing latency. And is it worth like going gung ho and trying to clear it your whole life? It just depends on your personal taste. Some people suppress things with a mighty will to stay as they are. Some people are, more interested in letting things flow and evolve and releasing these latencies and going through these experiences. What's good, bad, right, wrong, I don't know, but I think it's honestly a matter of, free will, personal choice, and what we've maybe come here to do. Do we ever finish? No, we don't. When we're incarnated, the essence of duality appears to be one that contains latency. So it's the same perspective on it's saying what you said in a different way. So here we are, and now we're like, all right, well, so that's life. Now what?
Yeah.
Right? Now what? Well, what do you want to do with it?
Right. Yeah. And
Right?
then, I mean, for me, it's all been rise to that level above consciousness, right? So
Yeah.
I live my life in this blissful place that is above duality, right?
Yeah.
Do I get drowned back into
Yeah.
duality? Yes. Do I
Yes.
awaken every single day inside of duality? Yes, surprisingly I
Yes.
do. I remember working with this life coach long ago. We were very short, like I only worked with her for like a month or so,
Yeah.
but I remember working with her and saying to her, I wake up pretty dark every morning. Every
Mm,
morning, that's just where I think I'm taken very far away at night, and
yes.
returning is always kind of shocking to me. I'm always like, wait, what, where
Where
are
am
we
I
again? Like,
again?
wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, I don't remember signing up for this. Like, it's every
Yes.
single night feels
Every
like that.
night.
And maybe Persephone connection, there's something very dark
Yeah.
there in
Yeah.
my karma, in my I've been often said Kali, as the
Yes.
tragedies of my life.
You have those vibes. Yeah, you do.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so and she was like, no, we can transform this, like you can wake up happy. And I really did try it, and I actually remember thinking she wasn't like a great match for me as a life coach, because in the end, like, I think for me, the people who I really can work with, and there's obviously very few, are people
Mm,
who can both hold space for the wholeness of
yeah.
me, which is very much 50% dark. And it isn't, I'm not a fucking cupcake. I'm not
Yeah.
some like nice, sweet, perfect, kind, happy person. I really am
Hmm.
all of those things. I'm also like
Yeah.
happy and sweet and kind,
Sure.
and I'm those things too. But I think that, and my teachings are about that. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people relate, because I don't I don't, what's that
Yeah.
word when you lie to
Conform.
people, but
Yeah.
yeah, but just like, I don't sugarcoat stuff. I
Yes.
curse, I'm hardcore, I'm pretty rough
Yes.
around the edges. And I think
Yeah.
people feel safe with me, because they're not like, oh, I think she's coming down the holy high mountain to
Right.
bring me this information. They can tell that
Right.
I actually went through the swamp, and I'm
You
like,
did.
check this out. Like, what
Yeah.
you can do with swamp water. Look what I do. And I pull out swamp water.
Yes.
Basically, my work is like the equivalent of taking swamp water that's like filled with like poop and like dirt
Yes.
and urine, and then transforming it into like a literal diamond. And
Yeah.
people are like, how did she do that? And it's called
Yeah.
alchemy. Like, I
That's
am
alchemy.
an alchemist. Yeah.
Yeah. That's alchemy right there.
Sucks
Transforming.
where it starts though, doesn't it? Like, you have to be willing to fit, like, to play
Yeah.
with bloody,
Yeah.
mortal
Yeah.
ephemeral stuff, and you have to be willing to get dirty to do it, right?
And embracing that essence of being human, and merging that with your higher consciousness is not an easy feat. If you think about like just the definition of alchemy, turning base metal to gold, it's a miraculous transformation from taking that which is the base and elevating it into something that would be considered more valuable and with spiritual essence. It's
Yeah.
not for the faint of heart.
No,
It's really
it's
not.
not.
That's what I say with shamanism. I teach shamanism, and I'll say in the beginning, and I'm a lovey-dovey unicorn. I'm that kind of a person, but I will say in the beginning, in the class, you're going to get to meet your guides, and this isn't a parlor trick
Mm.
for the faint of heart. If you choose, this is a journey that will allow you to take a conscious role in your evolution and open your being to everything beyond what you see with your physical eyes, and to experience things, you know, in a really multidimensional manner. And that's really what we're talking about, is being multidimensional
Hmm.
while incarnated in a physical body. I mean, that's a trip, right?
It is a trip. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could tell our listeners something that either has transformed that swamp water to the diamond for you, or for a lot of people you've seen, like something that could
Mm.
really help them if they are suffering, or even if they're not and they want to elevate, what would you share?
Um, God, there's so many things, and
Mm,
I don't want to. I'll try to just dial it down, but I do cover in my book. There's 44 laws, and the idea is like we're underneath these laws. So laws are
mm,
either above us or below us. So if you're above a
mm-hmm,
law, you are living in a state of equanimity, even though the law exists. The law doesn't cease to exist just because
Mm-hmm.
you are no longer under it. And I have found that studying these laws and being a master of this work for so many years is that the laws never end. It's not like, okay, I'm done with the law of imagination. I don't need to worry
Right.
about that one anymore. Or I'm done with the law of lying. I'm just done. They come back around right when we fall asleep to one, another one emerge. So it's
Mm,
always this endless, delicious work of seeing it. So I will say that all of that is in there, but I would say one of the greatest things I've been really enjoying lately is shadow, and really being open about who I actually am and what it looks
yeah.
like to be me. I
Mm-hmm.
think that people get this idea, they see me and I am this transformed person. I went from poverty to wealth. I went from
Mm-hmm.
heroin addiction to sobriety. I went from the loss of a child to being a mother. I
Yeah.
went from, loss with romance and men to being in a long,
Yeah.
delicious relationship with the man of my dreams, all these things. And I think people see me and they're like, she's done. Like she did it. And
Mm-hmm.
I am in some ways, like in the same way that Eckhart Tolle sometimes is like, okay, so then you have the career of your dreams and then you show up in this mansion and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, now what? Right.
Yeah.
So I I luckily did the spiritual side first, right? But anyway, the point is that I'm in this position and people expect me to be perfect. And I think the shadow work that I've done over the last, I think it's about 3 years now, has really helped me to be really vulnerable and to say, okay, well, I still suffer with some food and body dysmorphia stuff. I
Yeah.
still suffer with deep bouts of sadness that can feel
Mm.
deeply oppressive to me on a physical level.
Mm-hmm.
And those things I feel are so helpful to my students because I
Yeah.
think it relieves them to know that actually the ride continues even at these much more refined levels, It doesn't
Always.
have to be destitute. You don't have to be like
Always.
down and out, and
Mm-hmm.
so that really helps. So, and then this is my effort. Like when I do events and workshops, I'll often have people share like their most gross, disgusting sides, because I
Mm.
feel like until we can share that on a public level, even if for me it's public, I have a lot of
Yeah.
fans, right?
Public
But for
speaking
some
is,
people,
yeah.
even just share with 12 people or 5 people or even one person, you feel
Yes.
such a weight off your shoulders to be able
Yes.
to say, look, this is what it actually feels like. And
Mm-hmm.
people love you more. You think they're going to love you less, they're going to turn away from you. But if you can just share those parts of yourself
Yes.
that you're so busy trying to hide,
Yes.
I find that that's like my number one favorite
I love
parlor trick
that.
right now.
I love that. And I love that because in sharing, not only are you, acknowledging, owning, accepting those shadow parts, you're, opening yourself to the experience that may or may not occur of having them truly witnessed. And I think if that's an experience that you need, you draw it to yourself. And to be witnessed in your authenticity is a massive gift, right? It's a huge
Yeah.
gift. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lie, is what it's like, a lie to, because we think it's going to be the worst thing that can happen. And it seemingly like kind of doesn't go away. But I found that
Mm-hmm.
every boundary in my life, in terms of celebrity, in terms of fame, in terms of money, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
calmness inside of very high stakes situations,
Yeah.
has come from me sharing this stuff. Because the
Yeah.
more of myself that I'm willing to share, the less the stakes feel around like, will I get the Grammy? Will I not get the Grammy? And it's like, it used to mean
Right.
so much to me. Like, will I
Right.
get it? Because if I don't get it, I'm obviously a worthless piece of crap.
Right.
And it's like to be able to just say, like, I don't even, not that I don't care, that I'm not excited either way. I'm just not
Mm.
excited. I'm delighted by the being able to behold what the gods have in store for
Yeah.
me. I'm delighted, but I'm
Yeah.
also not attached to how it's going to look, because I have seen that my beloved, this energy that I, work with, has the best intentions for me, has the best
Whatever
in
it
store for
is.
me.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So, for our final question, if you could send a message back through time, one thing to your 17-year-old self, what would you tell her?
God, 17. 17. I don't know if I want her to know, on some level,
Right.
what she didn't know. She was so hurt. Her heart had been
Mm,
broken by the first true love. And
mm,
she went into years of loneliness and
mm.
deep, deep depression from that. And then
Yeah.
that turned into a drinking career. And I wouldn't want to
Mm,
take that from her.
right.
I don't think that I would be the woman that I am today if I hadn't burned, burned, burned. I really
Yes.
was such a mess.
Yeah.
And it was such a beautiful mess. And I wouldn't trade. It's funny. I was speaking to a client the other day, and she was talking about she's someone who used to be a drunk and
Mm,
spent some of her years actually parenting as a drunk, which, as you can imagine, is quite painful to be a parent
yeah.
and be an alcoholic, a drug addict.
Yeah.
But she was saying to me that her kids, some of them still resent her for what she had done as a,
At the time.
as a
Yeah.
drunk, as a drug addict. And I said, you gotta let that shit go. Cause
Yeah.
listen, they'd signed up for a drunk ass drug addict
Hmm.
mom for that part of the journey. And
Yeah.
that's the best that's the best ride, is to be able to, how many people get that, right? A lot of people have drunk parents,
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
people have drug addict parents, but not a lot of them get to see their parent transform into this completely new person. And what a gift.
Exactly.
Like, what
Exactly.
a cool, and it's just like, own it, like own the whole thing, instead of being like,
Mm,
oh, heroin addict Biet is somehow less superior to like awakened, wealthy,
yes.
famous Biet. Like, fuck that. Like, the truth
Yes.
is that fucked up, lonely, broken hearted Biet
Yeah.
wrote songs in her room and recorded records and laid underneath grand pianos and had sex with strangers.
Creativity.
And
Yeah.
she just did so much
Yeah.
incredible shit, and she felt so much joy and so much
Yes.
pain. And I just wouldn't want to, I don't want to be her anymore. I don't think I could be
Right.
her even if I wanted to, but I love her. And I think that is what I would say to 17-year-old me,
It's
is like,
beautiful.
just go be fucking fucked, because you're so good at it. You're probably
Yeah.
like, you're like a professional. They should make a movie about how terrible you are at life because you're that bad at it.
But what a crucible to transform within.
What a crucible, right?
Yeah. So that's
I
a
don't want to,
beautiful
before we
sentiment.
close, I want to dip into some of your genius. So just before
Oh,
we
you do.
go,
Oh, I love it.
yeah,
Turn the tables. What do you want to know?
no, I just want to feel I just want to feel some of your work. Would you share that with everyone today?
I
Like something that
will.
you would, if I came to you and said,
Yes.
I'm in pain in this way, like, can
Yeah.
you speak to my people? Can
Yeah.
you
It's such a it's such an honor that I get to talk to people's spirit guides for a living. And I've been doing it for 20 years, and it shows me just the absolute range of human experience, which is kind of what we've been talking about. The deep wells and the high peaks and everything in between. And if you came to me, you are just like such the classic and amazing and unique um, water element woman in Taoism. You are just
mm,
like, you've been in the black, you've been in the white, you've been here, there, everywhere. The script of the metal element, which comes before water in the creative cycle, doesn't
mm,
compel compel you that much. And you like, I get the sense you like to live without rules. I happen to be similar, although we've had different life paths, so I understand it. And
yeah.
I love that. I love that. And wherever everybody is, to come to that acceptance, that place that you're talking about, of loving that past self that was in so much pain, for example, you know, and whatever that is, if we can be present to where we are, understand that we won't ever have a complete picture probably while we're incarnated, but that we're here in this, you know, land of flesh and blood, but we're also existing in infinite dimensions. And so if we, all we need to do is like change our glasses to line up with all of these different dimensions. And that's how I talk to spirit guides. And I, you know, I've told you I teach shamanism and everything, and that's one way to do it. But shamanism is the process of going into alternate reality to bring back healing and information. That's the, you know, just you know, I think that's the crux of how I define it. But you really don't have to go anywhere to do that, because everything can come to you. And all I think in my work, although, you know, it shows up in all these different ways, especially with medical intuitive things, is if we can come into greater and greater levels of consciousness, then we're just able to kind of like flip the viewfinder to look into whatever other dimensions we'd like. And in doing so, if we choose, we can integrate the essence of that dimension in which we already exist into this reality. And that's how we kind of like select our realities. So that's kind of part of what I do, but I do that through this experience of talking to people's spirit guides and helping us to, you know, learn these deeper truths about ourselves, or why we have physical ailments, or whatever people come in for. The ultimate goal for me is to give people the tools or open the doors so people can choose and utilize their free will. It's my hope that they'll choose to potentially raise their vibration, because they'll have a more pleasant experience in incarnation, and B, then, you know, that helps raise the collective vibration. Does that matter from my perspective? I think it matters to the people who are experiencing it. Beyond that, to me, the universes are endless. They're kind of what I think of from almost a Gnostic perspective as the great diversity. And then we have this layer between, sometimes called the Sophia, that's, you know, electrical and mystical and whatnot, that I personally like. And then on the other side, we have the great beyond, and that exists outside of everything. And so all of existence, to me, is the great diversity. And then we have this great beyond. And as we run messages back and forth between the two, we get to have unique experiences. And that Sophia layer is a place where we can go. It would be, you know, the heights of experience and transcendent states and things like that. And we pull these little effervescent bubbles from the great beyond into the great diversity. And really, to me, it's just an ever expanding and yet singular, kind of paradoxical wave of energy, like just endless waves. So that's my little take on things.
I love that. And I mean, one thing I'm taking away from what you're saying is really helpful. And I think it comes back to the question about COVID in 2020, which is, I think a lot of people are trying to really come up with like a lot of meaning for this on a global scale. Like now the rainbow people will take over. It's all going to be like utopia from here on out. And like, not that I'm not down for utopia or whatever, but from what I've seen thus far, it doesn't look like that's coming ever, let alone in my lifetime. And it's not a bad thing. I think what we can do, and I think what you and I do for the world, is that we help people to transcend and alchemize the experience within something that isn't actually going to change on a mass level. Now, can we get this guy out of office, and can we move Kamala Harris in? Let's pray. Yes. But that's like a third dimensional thing. And you and I aren't even, even that, I mean, like worst case, if we don't, like maybe we'll all be talking from a prison cell somewhere, or like God knows what else. But like the truth is that you can find enlightenment anywhere, and not
Yes, you
even an
can.
evil man in the Oval Office, which is what we have now, can stop enlightenment from happening. No one can
Yes.
stop you, because there is literally no rules and no laws
No
in the world of
rules. No,
enlightenment.
there's
If you can
not.
get there, you're just, you get out, you're free
Yeah.
for as long as you are. And then I have found that it's a wheel, right? Like that, like
Yeah.
that state of aha, white light, I'm connected to
Yes.
source, I'm everything, I'm everyone. If some people have ever done mushrooms, ayahuasca, whatever, you've
Mm-hmm.
probably felt it. If you've ever worked with me, you've definitely felt it. But after that, it's a task. It's not like that's it. Enlightenment is just this straight line, and forever you're
No.
just sitting there like going, oh my God, I'm enlightened. Like it comes into a task. I mean, like your life purpose is in there, your
Yeah.
partner is in there.
Yeah.
It's this basket of tasks. So now I gotta go email 20 people. It's like,
I
you've
know.
got to be, who knew that enlightenment had emailing in it? You know, like
Tell
who
me
knew?
about it. And there's always, I think when we're in the dualistic construct, there will always be another level to which we can evolve. When we exit what I call the great diversity, which is all of existence, and, if we're in the great beyond, then it's simply is. But in the diversity, everything exists, and there'll always be more to which we can evolve. That's how I see it. If we feel like it, doesn't really matter. Do it or don't.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
If you feel like it might be an interesting ride.
Yeah, I don't know if you and I are big, like I don't feel like you and I are at a place where the choice is ours. Like there is a point where they say time starts being counted, and I think it's the moment when you're awakened. And when you're awakened, time becomes real. Up until then, it really isn't real. It doesn't matter if you stay asleep till the age of 90 and then awaken at 90. Time didn't exist, because time only exists inside of present moment, and you can't be in the present moment unless you're awake.
Profound. Talk about Yoda.
But sexy Yoda, okay?
Sexy Yoda.
Clear, yo.
Sexy Yoda with cute bangs and a cute little pink shirt, and on stage at Bonnaroo, making it happen.
Well, I love you. Thank you so much
I
for
love
having
you.
me today. What a joy.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for listening to our fun episode of Happily Holistic, and we will talk to you and hear from you in the comments, and we can't wait to connect with you. Biet, tell everybody where to find you on Instagram.
I'm at Guided by Biet, and it's guided by Biet, Biet.
Go get guided by Biet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Happily Holistic with me, Amy Lee Mercree. You can find out more about the show on amyleemercree.com on the podcast page. Please stop by your favorite social platform and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear how you liked today's show and what topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Come find me on Instagram and Facebook at Amy Lee Mercree. Until next time, stay happily holistic.